Central West. And the topics are on the right. We're going to spend approximately 15 minutes per topic. Try to keep it at that. And if it starts to go long, we will just try to slow it down, and we can go offline at any time after the meeting to talk further about any topics that need further discussion. And you can email me directly, or you can also add your comments into the chat box. You can title it with the topic and then add your comment next to that, so we get your feedback for sure. We definitely want to hear what you have to say, so do not hesitate to chime in. We'll ask for your feedback after we've presented the topic, and there'll be lots of time for everybody to have a say. You can raise your hand, or you can just unmute yourself when you're prompted for feedback. Okay. So just to reiterate, this is for feedback. We want your feedback so that we can give it directly to the board to make decisions for the coming year. We're not making any decisions. We are listening, and we're taking constructive feedback. So our first topic is our preseason play days, or it's actually all the events in your region. We're focusing on our preseason and in-season events. So play days. This year we sent out a coaches survey. Based on the respondents, it was overall satisfied with the events. We overwhelmingly got feedback that you want us to provide optional player and coaches education. Let's see, we provided 3 preseason play days for girls that were 12U, 14U in 3 different regions. Overall, the attendance was low in the Northwest region. We had high attendance in the Central West region. We had pretty good attendance in the Northeast region, however, not with the A level. So we would definitely want to hear your feedback on that. For our 10U and 8U programs for boys and girls, we offered a regional play day in each of the 4 regions. Ultimately, we were able to plan 3, and then we only actually hosted 1. 2 were canceled due to COVID. And in the Northeast region, in Sacramento, we did not get enough RSVPs to actually plan and host one. And we want your feedback to whatever you can offer, even though this is the Central West region, whatever feedback you have as far as like ideas to help promote the 10U, 8U play day for the in the Sacramento region, that would be very welcomed. Let's see. And I want you to keep in mind that these events are meant to not only provide opportunities before the season starts for your players and your coaches, but also that we use them to train and rate officials. So the current play day format was 2 to 3 mini games for, we had them from 8U to 14U be girls, and we had the AA teams as well for 14 and 12. We also have them for 8U and 10U boys, and the 12U boys we have limited based on which clubs host. So beyond that, if you have any feedback for play days, this is a good time for you to chime in.
I'll start. This is Casey Nissen with Pride. And I would say we had, for the A play days, one of the challenges has been just location. Like it's been up north the last couple of years. We were able to go 2 years ago, but not this year. And part of that is we have, I'm sure a lot of other clubs experience girls playing multiple sports. And so with the location being so far away, we just can't get enough kids to be there. So I'm just wondering for the A play date, if that could be a more central location, we would probably be able to attend that more often. For the 8 and 10, the lower age group play dates, the format changed this year with the coaching model, and I will take full responsibility. I must have misread the email because I didn't know I was supposed to be part of the coaching piece, but I got there a little bit late, and it was very well done by US Lacrosse, and the drills and the activities we participated in, we were able to do it with our teams right away. So I think that helped with transfer. So I think that was a nice way to structure it. It would be nice once the girls are out there. I think we had 2 games that day. It would be nice to have a minimum of 3 games because a lot of the kids at that level are new. We get to expose them to different positions. There's no pressure. We're trying out some of the new rules. As you said, the purpose is really training the refs as well. So it'd be nice if we could maybe truncate that coach session with a training piece and allow for teams to play a minimum of 3 games. But I did think it was very well done.
Cool. Anyone else?
I think this is Carl Fredericks from Skyline. I think we had a similar challenge with the U8, U10 girls in particular, just having such a long way to go for those play dates. I believe it was Napa, and we weren't getting a whole lot of adoption with those particular age groups just based on the distance.
Okay.
Hi, Allison from Oakland Lacrosse Club. I agree that the location has been challenging for us as well, but I think it's going to be a really impossible solution to find a location that really works for everybody. And so maybe the most equitable step would be to try to help each micro region host their own maybe, and provide refs, to multiple sites on one day, and everything is condensed, all the same stuff happens, but maybe they're not full-length games, or I don't know, some kind of tournament format that can be hosted on one field in one day with maybe 3 to 4 teams. But I love the idea of having a space for our referees to get trained and evaluated and educated, but also our kids who are completely brand new to the sport, to have that opportunity to just learn the game in a low risks kind of environment. So I love the idea. I wish we could come. It's been challenging with location and transportation.
Okay. Just to ask, Oakland, what location other than obviously in Oakland would be most ideal? But we have historically hosted these in Pleasanton or Petaluma. Those would be the closest to you. So those still are just a little bit too far to accommodate your club for that play day.
Yeah. Well, Treasure Island is super close for us,
Okay.
but I think it's also just within our club, some of the experiences, of it being so brand new for a lot of kids, organizing all of the transportation needed in the beginning of season. It's just a lot to do because we're still recruiting, registering, coaches training. We're just doing a lot. At the end of the season, it's really easy for us to be able to do a bigger distance travel because we gotten all the parents on board. But at the beginning of the season, it's just really hard for us to organize. But we've always wanted to go. It's definitely something we would like to do. But to answer your original question, Treasure Island is definitely the closest for us. But in the fall of last year, we hosted a little 5v5 tournament, and it was just a really easy way. We did it on one field, and obviously we couldn't include a lot of teams, but I know for the teams just in Oakland, it was really close. And I think just making them smaller and doing more of them might be a way that this location issue can be kind of solved for everybody, right? Because I think we're all dealing with that.
Yeah. I think the play days are unique because we do rely on them to train on the field training and rating for the junior officials especially. And the raters there's only so many officials that are certified raters. So having them all at the same place on the same day and the kids just kind of come through and get their games in, and the raters rate them. I think that's one reason why we have like a limited offering. So just, there might be another way to offer kind of a different product that is more towards education piece for the players and coaches that maybe has less to do with the officials preseason. And then we can talk about facilitating preseason education for coaches and players separate, that would still be in a play day model, but not necessarily completely attached to officials training. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you. I hadn't considered that of it, so thank you for sharing that.
Erin.
Oh, go ahead.
Erin, this is Jeff. I love that idea. Separating out these two in terms of the objectives that they are trying to achieve. I think it's smart because it's clear from the last couple of years that just the distance traveled just doesn't work. But everyone recognizes the value to both players and coaches in terms of development there, and having it needs to serve. It's serving a different purpose to have it for the umpires. So anyway, I completely agree with what you're saying about having two different types of offerings.
Yeah. I would want to continue the conversation about that, because I think the things that pop in my mind would be staffing issues, and obviously getting just making sure that we give offerings to clubs who have different needs. So clubs have different needs, as everyone knows. They're different sizes, girls versus boys, A's versus B's, whatnot. So I think this is definitely a topic we can take further. I do want to reach out to ask, as far as boys are concerned, play days. We have less play day offerings for boys in general. So does anybody have any feedback as far as play days are concerned, preseason events that you feel like the NCJLA can change or improve upon? And for the needs of the boys teams in the preseason?
Hi, my name's Kate. I'm from Pleasanton and I'm part of the boys club. Our families, I think at the young age, really like the play days. It just has to be really close. I think like someone said earlier, it's hard to get the parents to buy in to travel at the beginning of the season, especially with the little ones. So I think if you could offer more stuff, that would be awesome. And I think the families would appreciate it.
Okay. Anyone want to chime in for the older boys? Are we hitting all the marks for preseason scrimmage play days? Jamborees, which I always want to make sure I put it out there that they're different. Play days are preseason. Jamborees are in season. They're NCJLA events where you sign up and you play in season games that count towards your schedule for the 10U teams. 8U doesn't keep score, but they still can have their season of games and have as many or as few as you'd like. We want to know, did the NCJLA scheduling of the Jamborees assist your club schedulers, and was your club able to secure enough games?
So Erin, this is Brian from Pride. I know for us, both the last year or the year before and this most recent year, the Jamborees are not something that worked at all for us. They were just too far away, and there was very minimal interest from our teams in driving that far. So we just skipped them completely and focused on scheduling games, kind of in the East Bay or closer areas.
Okay. I also wanted to add in that Jamborees have been offered the last 2 years. This past season, we offered 4 regional Jamborees, and the year before that, we offered 17. So we decided to drop down the number. It was extremely costly for number one for the league, but also just paring it down so that clubs can choose to go. We wanted to have one in each region, which we scheduled, and then the other games for your 10s and 8s would be scheduled by you and by the schedulers. But for the Jamboree scheduling, is there any feedback on the process? So this year we had in-person scheduling for Jamborees at the December scheduling meeting. And then we took that data and put it online into a Google shared spreadsheet, and we made adjustments and additions, and we were heading in the direction to complete those full schedules for Menlo and etc. Did that work for your clubs? And do you have any feedback to make it better or change?
Hey, this is Marco at Berkeley.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that was weird for us was we had games that were scheduled. We had like 2 games scheduled in the morning, the last one being like at 10:30, and the next one was not until like 2:30. So maybe we can be mindful of that, because that was we ended up not having to play them or getting to play them, obviously. But we had a lot of parents that were like, I'm not going to stay in Napa for 3 hours doing nothing. Right. What are we supposed to do, right? So maybe that's something just to be taken into consideration, is the locations and groupings of the teams.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, that was the only thing that was weird for us, was that, so we ended up.
Would you say like maybe going towards a round robin system where you're going and you're playing 2 teams and you're playing either back to back or game on, game off, game on, and you've got 2 games? What gets really challenging with scheduling a Jamboree, it's essentially scheduling a tournament. Right. And there's only so many fields and everybody wants to come, and having to plug people in to make it equal and make sense is extremely challenging. So if you've ever had a kid go to an actual tournament where they do have 3 games, but that first game's at 8 a.m. and the last game's at 5, it's because that's the way the schedule works, because you've got 50 teams coming all to the same place.
Right.
So I want your feedback, because I want this to work out, because I think it has been, a great addition to the league, but the scheduling part, like the centralized scheduling, I think works. But I feel like I also know that people want to have control over when they come and when they leave. So how do we meet in the middle?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, certainly an amount of time in some games would be expected, right? So maybe just try to minimize it. I know it can be completely avoided, but maybe just to keep in mind to like that being the thought of like to minimize it. Like an hour is fine usually. Even 2 you could see, but so I don't know. That was just the experience that we had with that, but other than that, it was fine.
You weren't the only person, and we definitely would try to scrub it as much as possible to shrink that gap of time. And in some circumstances, we would call the club and talk it through with them, the clubs that it was affecting, to see if they were okay with it or not okay with it. And so I think that's the other part of the Jamboree question, is that up until the date of the Jamborees, that we have the centralized scheduling piece to it, where we might need to move you around, and how that affects teams is important. So with those maybe possible last minute changes, the same things that would happen in a potential tournament, where there's people dropping out, people wanting to add in, and having that cutoff date of it's done, it's the week before, and you got to come. And if you don't come, that means your opponent doesn't get a game. Those are the rules of Jamboree scheduling.
Sure.
Is there any feedback you have? Anyone on those points?
Aaron, this is Phil from Walnut Creek. During scheduling, didn't we actually choose our times for the jamborees, if I'm not mistaken?
You did. So you did choose times in the in-person meeting. We attempted to have that there for people to sign up and play each other. But when we went back and we put it in the schedule so we get the fields from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So we pay for the fields for the whole day, and facilities that have 3 fields. So of course we want to fill it up, and we don't want to have an 8 a.m. game and then a 10 o'clock game and then a 1, and then the field just empty in between. So as people added in so that we could have a full schedule, it just starts to not make sense anymore. And you might have, and we had funny things happen, like people signed up to go to Menlo and they were both teams from like the East Bay. So why would you drive all the way to Menlo to play your neighbor? Wouldn't you want to play a club that's a home team that's in that region? So those are the kind of problems we came into in the scheduling process, even though it seemed good in theory for you to sign up in advance to play against that team. But then it just didn't make sense to like drive down where you could maybe schedule a home game with that team and play somebody else while you're down in Menlo. So I think we're still working on the process of the RSVP that, yes, I want to go, this is when I want to go, but putting it maybe back to the way we did 2 years ago, where we completely schedule it out for you based on your requests. And we don't publish it until we've got a full schedule. And then we go, bam, there it is.
Aaron, one quick comment. I would just encourage the board to just revisit the original objective of these jamborees when they got put into place 2 years ago and see if they're actually meeting those needs, or just exacerbating scheduling and logistic issues.
Yeah.
I just look back and review exactly why the board thought that it was a good offering or it was a worthwhile venture, instead of just sort of taking it from this year and tweaking this somewhat. I just don't want you. I want to make sure that you guys aren't losing sight of all of those reasons.
Yeah. I guess the biggest question would be, do you guys still want jamborees offered? Regional jamborees.
Well, I mean, Aaron, I would say if you say regional jamboree, yes. The problem was we didn't have one in our region, so that was the gap for us. So we actually planned some, not quite a jamboree, but a couple of days in Pleasanton where we had scheduled to have 8 different teams come and play, a big round robin where they got to play a variety of different teams. And we had, even more demand for those days than what we could accommodate just based on the field space we have. But because we didn't have a jamboree in our region, that was the same problem the year before, right? It was Treasure Island. And I think someone already mentioned at 8U and 10U, the parents do not want to travel that far. It's just the reality that for those younger kids, they have no interest in driving to the peninsula or Treasure Island or Napa. It's just too far for the age of the kids.
So a regional jamboree, having another regional jamboree or 2 in the East Bay would be.
We would have the field space in Pleasanton, again, not knowing exactly what it's going to look like next year, but based on prior years' field availability, we have the fields to do it. And based on what I saw this year, I think there would be a lot of interest in making that work for the 8Us and the 10Us.
Okay.
Aaron, this is Larry, also from Pleasanton. And is it possible to do, like, as just kind of jumping on Brian's words, as far as doing a mini jamboree? I mean, I'm not sure as far as how the other locations are, like the Scorpions. I know that they use their fields as well, but we definitely can open up our fields to have like a mini jamboree, if you will, for the day. We just have to But that's something I think would be great if we had like, you know, some of these big teams or, you know, just a smaller gathering would be great.
Okay. That's good feedback. Mini jamborees.
This is, I'm sorry, my audio is going in and out. This is Casey from Girls Pleasanton as well. So this may have already been said, but I know 2 years ago when we did the jamborees, that was like the season. The biggest complaint was that we weren't playing every weekend. Like we want the girls to be playing in a routine fashion, and that's how they're going to get consistency in what they're doing on the field. So a jamboree, I would say if you're going to continue doing them, would just be to enhance regular season weekly games. So again, but I like what Jeff said about just revisiting kind of the purpose of what those are doing. But that really worked when we went back this year, just scheduling every weekend, you know, 2 games per weekend with other clubs in our area. That was much better received by families, coaches, and players. Even though we didn't get to play the season, when we sent out the schedule, everyone was much happier with that setup. So for what that's worth.
Well, that's a good point because we didn't intend for people to only go to jamborees 2 seasons ago. It's something kind of like got lost in translation. So sorry that happened, but we definitely want jamborees to be the fill-in and to be the fun thing and offering it to clubs who maybe only want to do jamborees. That's totally up to them, but to definitely continue to play in-season games home and away, round robins, however you choose at your home field against your neighbor clubs. But the jamborees were meant to be regional, yet be also incentive for clubs to maybe leave their region to come out and go to an event. But I do see that there was not a jamboree offered this year in the Central West. So I'd like to move on. If there's any more comments, you can type them in the box. The NorCal chapter of US Lacrosse has a brief presentation, and so I'd like to hand it off. I think, Ted, are you on the call again?
No, it's Lynn. It's Lynn for Ted again. Ted and I are splitting these calls. Yeah. So, you know, we can really drive through this quickly. I think that what Ted really wanted to get across is he wants to remind people, you know, that you do have a chapter that's here to support you on as well as, you know, US Lacrosse in general and myself. Here, go ahead and skip forward to the next slide. So, I mean, the big things that they do, and the one thing that I want to really highlight for people that I think people forget about or maybe aren't even aware is that one of the things that this chapter does that I don't think there are any other chapters that do this across the country, but they have a really robust loaner program for equipment. So they have sticks, boys and girls sticks, balls, they have goals, they have a whole laundry list of stuff that they loan out at no cost to programs. If you're, you know, starting a new age group or you're just doing like your own version of a Trilux clinic or something like that. So remember that because it's awesome. It's a great resource for you guys. They do the Hall of Fame. Hall of Fame nominations are open right now. They close, I think, at the end of the month. They support, you know, player activities, and they of course support what NCJLA is doing on education and training, which is going to be covered more at the end of this session. So go ahead and skip to the next slide. Are you driving, Erin? Are you driving the slide? Are you the driver? Keep going.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, no worries. So the big thing that I think the chapter was really interested in kind of just getting in front of you guys about is officials recruitment. It's been a big topic on their board meetings. They meet monthly. They have representatives, Laura Jennings typically on those meetings, but they also have representatives from the NCWLO, which is the officials organization on the girls' side, the NCLRA on the boys' side. And I don't want to get dramatic about this, but you guys are definitely starting to face an officials crisis, which is not uncommon. I mean, it's happening across the country. You know, we've all read the articles on how all sports are losing officials, and there's a couple things happening, really 2 things. Officials are aging out. We're just getting too darn old, our knees are giving out or whatever. And sportsmanship has been just a huge challenge, not so much in your footprint, but it's certainly a big challenge in other areas. And it's a challenge for junior officials, which we'll talk about really in just a sec. You know, it's making these kids just not want to come back. Adults have a little thicker skin typically, especially ones that want to be officials, so they're usually okay with it. But, you know, I mean, I'll give Idaho in our Pacific Northwest region as a good example. They have a much smaller, you know, lacrosse scene there, but they have, I think, 9 plus adult officials that do the bulk of their games, high school, and actually a lot of youth, because they don't have a junior officials program like you guys do. They lost 5 of those last year to sportsmanship. They had officials just walk off who had been doing it for years because the level of beratement and everything else that they were getting at games was just off the charts. So yeah, that league has a huge sportsmanship issue, which we're trying to help them address, but it does happen at all levels. Coaches just lose their minds. They don't mean to. You guys all know, if you've been a coach, sometimes that just happens. It's not right, but it happens. And the you know, certainly the parents have issues. So so it's an issue. I think that the chapter, and of course I think the league, also want to get it in front of you guys that, you know, we're all in this together. We can't play without officials. So let's really try and focus on particularly adult officials, trying to do some recruiting within your areas. Laura Jennings was on the last session call that I was at, and the one previous to this, and she, I know, has a lot of concerns about returning to play in a post-COVID or a COVID world, and having to really watch how officials are assigned. They're not going to be able to travel like they used to. Like if you've got an official in Monterey, you know, and they're the only ones that are available to do a game in, you know, Sacramento, or even just the next county over, that's not going to be something that they can do as assigners. So, you know, more than ever, it may be really important to grow our own officials in your own, you know, footprint. And this, I'm kind of looking at. I mean, I think this Central West region, my guess is that you guys probably already do a really excellent job, and you have a lot of officials in your footprint. The last call I was on, it was more SAC based, and I think they struggle in that area. But just, you know, again, putting that kind of on everybody's radar. And I know the NCGLA has a policy about recruiting officials. A lot of leagues do that. It's really challenging to kind of enforce, you know. I mean, I know leagues that fine programs that don't recruit a certain number of officials based on the size of your program. But, you know, there's carrot, there's a stick. I mean, there's no perfect way to do it, and I don't think either is tremendously effective. I think it's just it's a two-pronged thing with officials, making sure that you grow your junior officials program and you get a great pipeline of kids coming in and they have a really positive experience and they're not getting yelled at by parents, so that they learn to love it and they get the bug. Those are the kids that become these awesome adult officials. I've seen that in other footprints where they have kids who went through the junior officiating program in high school and they come back. You know, in college, they officiate wherever they're at on high school games, and then they come back and they stay on as officials, or maybe they come back to coach. So, you know, making sure that your junior officials all have a really positive experience, and that's an expectation you can set on a club level. You know, and again, just trying to get those kids in the pipeline, and then really, really trying hard to do your best to try and recruit adults. And there's obviously a couple different ways you can go with that. I think recruiting adults in your community that already officiate another sport, particularly basketball officials, is a great way to do it, because they already have a certain sense of confidence around officiating, and they tend to like it. But we find that with lacrosse, for whatever reason, and as we know on the girls' side, we've got a lot of different rules. It gets a little overwhelming. But I think that, you know, getting parents or people that have a really strong tie to the community and want to see it grow, either they have a kid that played or whatever, those are the officials that tend to return, and that we tend to be able to grow to grow for the long term. So, you know, whatever you can do to try and get that going. Somebody on the last call mentioned trying to recruit like a parent and a kid, like maybe a freshman kid and a parent, to go through the training together, and then they can potentially work some games together. It's a great idea. I mean, I've seen that in my own LOA up in Washington. We do have parents and kids and they love it. It's a great bonding experience. They can totally geek out on it over the dinner table, the rules book and all of that. So that's something to consider. I'm a women's official. I never played the game. I grew up riding horses. So, you know, it's a steep learning curve for sure once you get to the higher levels, but it's not impossible. So, you know, I always say, if I can do it, anybody can do it. So that's the officials thing. You know, keep those recruiting efforts alive, and both LOAs, the girl side and the guy side, they can give you, there's flyers, there's PDFs, there's all kinds of things that they can give you. They make it very easy to get trained. I really think they do an excellent job. A lot of it's online, more of it will be online. But it's a matter of getting those bodies in the pipeline. So that's the pitch. There you go. Go to the next slide there. Yeah, I was gonna say, I think she's got, you know, again, I just spoke to, you know, junior officials, get those high school kids in the pipeline. You know, club incentives. I know a lot of clubs that will do that. They'll offer free registration for parents if they will go through the officials training. Usually they'll attach, like, you have to complete the training, get certified, and do like 5 games or something like that. But that could be something. And, you know, and grow it internally, you know, have your 14U kids ref your 8U games, or, you know, whatever it is. They can get some support and some training, not have to go through the whole certification thing, but just get them on the field, and get the parents at that age too, where it's not intimidating. You know, where the parents of the 8U kids don't know the game either, so they're not going to get yelled at or whatever it is, right? So, so that's that, and go ahead and go to the next. Yeah, and there's contact information. Again, you know, NorCal chapter, they are definitely here to support you, but I think the big thing to remember about them is that equipment loaner program, because it's awesome. And I'm here to support, you know, everything, so for sure. I am going to say right now, just because I have to jump off this call at 2, and I know it will go beyond that. In the latter part of this presentation, they talk about resources, the grants, the equipment grants, and that type of thing. I'm just going to address it now in case I'm not on the call later. We are hoping to have a normal grant cycle. We would normally open that up for the 2021 season, probably in August or so. Fingers crossed. That we have great funding and that we're able to support. It's looking pretty positive right now. We've been hit very hard by the pandemic, as everyone has, with drop-offs, with donations and memberships and that kind of thing because of lack of play. But it's looking good. I'm really optimistic. So when that stuff comes up later, if you guys have any specific questions on that, you know, take down my email address, ping me, and I'm happy to chat with you about the grant situation. And I think that's all he's got on there.
Yeah, that's it.
Ted did the slides. Okay, cool. And I'm on till 2. So if you have any questions, certainly enter them in the chat box. But I'm going to mute my microphone unless anybody has any questions now. No.
Well,
Okay.
I'll add that we are going to be talking about ideas and recruiting a little bit more for officials, diving in a little deeper in the girls session. So
great.
Just to have a little bit more interaction and interactive workshopping.
Awesome. That's
Okay.
great. Thanks.
All right. So, all right, now we're going to talk about scheduling.
You need to put away the
yeah.
dishes.
What was that? Okay. So for scheduling, should the dates be moved to January? We want to know your feedback. And is it still beneficial for your clubs to do your A in high school before B? We want to know about your the in-person scheduling date. Should we bump it to second Saturday in January or keep it in December? And if we did bump it to January, then we would also bump back the B levels, would also move to January after. We want to know what we should do about clubs that do not attend if we have in-person scheduling meeting. And if you have any suggestions on the format of the meeting.
And Aaron, I'm assuming, I mean, we don't even know if we can have a whole bunch of people in a room for hours at a time in January. So are you kind of have a contingency plan that we would do B the same way A is done in an online format?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if the COVID situation will alter whatever we do, if if we can't play outside of conferences, certainly it'd be much easier to facilitate smaller online scheduling meetings like conference scheduling meetings, for example. But let's say we're back to regular season. We want to see if what we've done before going forward works, and especially concerning when.
Yeah, I mean, for me, so on the one hand, I like December because parents are really anxious to find out the schedule, and you know, they start asking right after Christmas, and so from that perspective, it's nice to have that mostly done early. On the other hand, it seemed like what happened is we had that meeting, and then starting about 2 days before the schedules were due, everybody started sending emails around to request changes or confirm, clear up misunderstandings from that meeting that was now 3 weeks ago. So I feel like if we continue to have the meeting earlier, we also should require the schedules to be input very soon after that meeting, because that time lag is just, you know, not productive. And by the time you get to trying to clarify what happened at that meeting where two people wrote down something different, it was so long ago that it just becomes a huge challenge. So I think the January time could work. And from that perspective, it's good that we wouldn't have this long dark period after having the meeting, from when everybody then tries to validate what happened and input that into the system. And I'll say my biggest complaint about the scheduling is the way the conference, non-conference rules are, that I feel like it's a real problem in effective scheduling, that we create these artificial 3-4 team quote conferences, even though there are a bunch of, 3 different conferences that all have teams in the same area that want to play each other. So for example, if our 2 12B teams want to play the 2 12B teams at Santa Ramon in a 4-team round robin, supposedly the way the NCGLA publishes the scheduling process, we are not supposed to schedule that as one big event because we're not all in the same conference. And I don't understand the rationale for that. It makes no sense to me. And I feel like that the inability to do the full schedule when you first are talking to the different clubs just created huge logistical problems at the B level, and especially was, I think, completely absurd at the A level, where you only had 7 12A teams and we split them into 2 conferences and wasted 2 nights doing scheduling instead of just taking care of it all at once.
So what you said about the conferences, you said Pleasanton?
Yeah, so like I think there were 3 conferences that included the East Bay teams. And so our 2 Pleasanton teams would be in 2 different conferences, and the Scorpions teams would be in different conferences, and Santa Ramon's 2 teams would be in 2 different conferences. So if we're trying to do a schedule and say, hey, we want our 2 teams and this club's 2 teams to have a 4-team round robin, or even that we, generally we like our 2 teams to host 2 other teams for a 4-team round robin, even if it's, you know, a Walnut Creek and a La Miranda and our 2 teams, because they're in different conferences. You know, we have to find a workaround in order to get the schedule to work efficiently. And the way the rules are set up at that meeting, it I think gets in the way of effectively and efficiently scheduling.
Okay. Well, I think I could help mitigate that because I understand your point. And I think the guidelines in scheduling meeting where you want to schedule those in-conference games, when you have a conference of, we're giving the guidelines to schedule your in-conference first, and then any out-of-conference games would be after that. That those are guidelines as far as like what you have down on paper, and you are allowed to play all of those teams. We make the conferences based on strength score and also region. So if other people agree that, would you prefer to have all 2 or 3 of your teams be in the same conference with yourselves, or have, and this is going to come up on a later slide, the size of a conference. So when we'll ask you all as a group what you think makes the perfect size of a conference.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I guess I don't understand. So it's fine to me. The conference size doesn't really matter all that much. And if you say there is still a policy that you have to play every team in your conference, that's all fine. But it's not really a guideline, actually. And when you look at the A scheduling, that's where it was most obvious. So for 12A, there were 7 teams, 2 different conferences. And the first night during that online process, we were not allowed to enter games against the other conference. Well, that was
Right.
silly. And so we ended up like trying to hold the right spot for a team that was in the other conference. And so you schedule things that maybe wouldn't make sense. And then you come back the next night and you try to schedule the other 4 teams, and you'd already taken that spot, or they scheduled something that conflicts. And so you end up with teams that have just no games on a certain day, or you can't make it work because we weren't partnering together to put a cohesive schedule together at one time. And the in-person meeting was kind of the same. You remember she kind of cordoned us off into different parts of the room and tried not to let us talk to people from other conferences. And so when you've got a certain day and you're trying to fit the pieces together, you know, limiting it to only those 3 teams first and then trying to fill in the gaps after that just made it really difficult for us.
Thank you for your feedback. That was good. I think the A model point that you made it a little bit more clear. So I appreciate that. Anybody else have any feedback about these bullet points?
Hey, Aaron.
Yeah, Aaron. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Brian. Hey, it's Jen Peavy from La Miranda. I'd support, Pleasant and Pride's view on that as well. I think that, you know, it's great to play teams, of course, outside our area, but we also have long holding relationships with the local teams in our area that we want to play. So, you know, not being able to schedule our local teams within 5-10 minutes of our geographical location versus having to try to schedule games with teams that are outside of our general area really makes it difficult. And, you know, kind of goes against what, you know, we're trying to do. So, you know, I would like to see the ability for us to schedule or have conferences that are, you know, especially in the B level, more in our geographical area versus being spread out so much.
Okay. Any other feedback?
Aaron, this is Brian from Diablo Scorpions. I agree with Jen and Brian from Pride there. You know, Brian is correct. There's, you know, if he has 2 teams and I have 1 team or vice versa, there's no reason why we all can't play each other on that same day, or even if you know, I have 2 teams and you know, let's just say another club wants to come from, you know, let's say Skyline wants to come and wants to play both of our 2 teams. There's no reason why we can't schedule with each other at the same time. So Skyline gets to play 2 Diablo teams on the same day, gets that out of the way, but is prohibited because they're not in the same conference. So I think we talked about that. On to the A scheduling, I would favor keeping it in December. I think, it's, getting that done and then having to do the other scheduling on top of that, at a later time, even though it's only a week difference. I think it's a big help to knock the scheduling A out. So I would be in favor of keeping it in December.
Yeah, this is Fritz Frederick from Skyline. I think, there was an earlier point made, I think, about field availability. It may have been in the previous session this morning, but field availability is fairly tight for us within the Skyline area, Oakland, Piedmont, Alameda. So finding fields is fairly challenging. So I know that I was not personally involved in the scheduling last year, but I think the earlier we can do that allows us to be better positioned for reserving field space.
Hey, Aaron, it's Phil from Walnut Creek. I agree with everybody. I've been doing scheduling. I think this was my 9th year this past season, so I've seen all different formats, and it strikes me odd that we live in the Tech Valley and we can't figure this out. It boggles my mind. My suggestion would be is our problem too is we don't know who's in our region until 2 or 3 days before the actual meeting. And that becomes, because obviously you guys don't know what teams are. And in our area, we know all the teams basically are going to stay the same. Minus 1 or 2 teams in each division. I don't see why we can't in December make these leagues or whatever and just treat them like a high school where we play each other, we get our schedule, and then in January, if we want to schedule outside games, we do that. It seems pretty straightforward. We want to play La Miranda, Scorpions. We have basically in our B division, we have a 10-mile radius. We want to stay in our area. That's what our parents want. We don't want to travel to Sacramento and all that, maybe once a while, but we want to play local teams. So that's kind of my thinking is, I don't know why we can't figure this out. It seems pretty easy to accomplish. I mean, the high schools are doing it. I don't see why we can't just copy the high school model.
Yeah, I'll add on to Phil what he said. For our A teams this year with Pride, we asked for a commitment level because we really struggled 2 years ago with getting our A teams to travel and commit to showing up to games. And so that meant that a lot of our multi-sport players, might have chosen a B team just because they weren't able to make that 80% commitment for an A team. And so then we really have to focus and get our B teams to, especially at the higher levels, to be local. And we did restrict like how many times that they would travel out of the East Bay. So it'd be great if NCGLA could sort of take that into consideration, like when we're trying to, move policies to make bigger commitments to things like A team, travel or games, that it might be more beneficial if we can, have more leverage to schedule within our region.
Hey, Aaron, it's Kelly French. I just wanted to chime in. For those of you that don't know, I actually used to be responsible for centralized scheduling for all of the girls in the NCGLA, and so have, been involved with securing information about everyone's spring breaks and their blackout dates and whatnot. And Phil, the only difference between high school, because I've done high school scheduling too, the difference between high school scheduling and NCGLA scheduling is everyone's individual requests. So for the high school season, you get your schedule. It is what it is. Everyone's pretty much on the same schedule. But for NCGLA, there are so many, it's different because there are so many different requests that it makes the centralized scheduling very difficult. And it's not that it can't be done, because it has been done in the past. And it's certainly something at the board level that has been suggested to give everyone a conference schedule, and then you can do your non-conference schedule yourself. You do lose the ability to choose, right? So that the pushback we've gotten on that in the past is like, oh, well, I want to be able to, in fact, for my, when I was coaching A's in Pleasanton, I'd been over backwards to accommodate the soccer schedule. I would get the soccer schedule and totally work around it, and so because I was doing the own scheduling, I could do that. So clubs give up that flexibility if we go to a kind of more centralized schedule, or a hybrid of a centralized schedule.
Kelly, I agree with you. I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago, Kelly, that we did the scheduling where you wouldn't let us leave the table until our conference was basically done, scheduled, and then we moved on to the out of conference games. I think by far that was the best year scheduling wise. But what kind of requests are we talking about? Like, as far as what requests are you guys getting?
So spring breaks, as you guys know, spring breaks vary widely from school district to school district. So we have a period of about a month that cover all the different spring breaks. And then, some clubs are wide open, schedule me games whenever. Kate made a comment on the chat earlier about, hey, spring break would be great. That's not universal. So some clubs like that, some clubs don't. And then sometimes individual coaches are working around, like I said, the soccer players, or they have a wedding, or, just kind of, one year I did a pretty extensive Google Doc where everybody provided information, via Google form. And then I had a pretty detailed Google Doc that I could share with everybody, so you could see all the blackout dates and whatnot. And so I've done that, and it's time consuming, but not difficult. So, and I think we could do online. And now that everyone's so used to Zoom, I was thinking, like, could we move to a Zoom call or a WebEx call where we do breakout rooms, right? You can do breakout rooms, and, could we limit the driving? I personally have made so many awesome friendships through lacrosse that I do love the scheduling meeting, because I like seeing all you people in person, but it is a bit of a burden for schedulers.
Thank you for your feedback, Kelly. I think the other thing I wanted to just add in is, like, just forming the conferences to everyone's liking and desires is also, it's in itself a challenge. Like,
sorry.
Go ahead.
Are you going to allow the clubs to form their conferences?
The idea has been brought up, and I'm glad you're saying it out loud. I think it would be more of a cooperative process, that we get feedback of where you think you should be, and I thought of polling everyone, like, which conference do you feel like you fit in our regions. Another topic would be, do you want to join a travel conference? Like, even if you're a B team or a 12U team that's not in the A, but you would be willing to travel, and who else would be willing to travel? Is there a team that wants to go to Santa Cruz one weekend and Chico the next weekend, Santa Cruz? And some clubs might want to have a team that we know ahead of time that is willing to travel, and maybe group those people together, or a sub conference. So that you can meet together, like, you are all the people that want to travel, so go make your games.
Aaron, can you talk a little bit about what's the purpose of the conferences? Because like for us, I know our teams are split up to be
Yeah.
all the same levels. So they're kind of randomly distributed among the 3 different Central, West, 1, 2, 3 conferences. I don't totally understand even what the purpose or the impact is of being in one conference versus another.
So for this season, one of the main points was that in your region, because you're not the only club that did have multiple teams, is to put your in-conference games with strength scores. Now, however, there is the other component of the scheduling appendix. So we want to give guidance so that everyone has the equal opportunity to have games without putting too many restrictions. So the only restriction would be that you play all of your conference teams one time, and then beyond that, you can play whoever you want, and up to, you have a minimum, so the minimum of, I believe, 10, and then a maximum of 16. So if then you get to choose, you could essentially play your other teams every weekend. Like, you didn't have to play anybody else. So if Pleasanton Blue wanted to play Pleasanton gray or whatever colors you are for every other game up to 16, you could have. You have there's no restriction of who you play beyond the other teams in your conference.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the reality for us is that we want to play all of the San Ramon teams and all of the Scorpion teams and Walnut Creek and La Marinda and Skyline, so it makes sense to say if we didn't do that. But it seems strange that there's these 3 random teams that you have to play, and then everything else, all the other teams in East Bay, we still want to play them anyways. And so whether we were in one giant conference or 4 tiny conferences, I don't think it has any impact on what teams we want to play throughout the season. Kind of what Phil was saying, right? We want to play this whole group. And I still don't totally get the objective of these randomly splitting teams up into tiny 4-team conferences.
Hey, Aaron, it's Jen. I don't think it's necessarily so much about strength of the team. I think it's more so for at least the East Bay 680 corridor teams is that we want to play each other. We're all within, 2, 3, 5 miles of each other. It's our community. Our kids are going to go to high school together. We see each other at the grocery store. I think that's what's important to us, and to limit the traveling for our parents. It's not that we don't want to play teams outside of our area. We can do that for, out of area conferencing or non-conference games. But to make sure that, our teams are in an area so that we can do that versus having to, not schedule an all-day Pleasanton day or an all-day Walnut Creek day. We all really like doing that. It brings our community together.
Can you be specific of what restrictions you're mentioning that are keeping you from having the schedule that you want?
Well, if you're talking about having other, teams from outside of our area, for instance, let's just say, just for kicks and giggles, let's say you put a Southern Marin team, or you put me in a conference with a Southern Marin team, and I have to schedule them. Well, that takes away, and let's say Pleasanton or Walnut Creek or Scorps is having an all-day, event. And we can't go because that's the only day that works for somebody that's not in my area.
Right.
That's the problem. Like, we want to play each other. It's not that we don't want to go out or play Southern Marin, but we want to participate in the event in our area.
Okay. So I think the biggest takeaway from this would be that you guys, maybe not everyone agrees, but to keep the conferences more as local as possible, and to agree on like who is allowed in the conferences that the teams in the Central West are part of. So making sure that if you look at the clubs that fall into your region, does that everybody agree with those, and that when we're structuring conferences that only those teams are placed in those conferences.
Yeah, or give us the power to to form our conference. You know, I think there's nine of us, I believe, if I missed anyone. Diablo, San Ramon, La Miranda, us, Pleasanton, Livermore, Skyline, Berkeley, and Alameda.
Yeah.
The other
I
approach
think-
would be just to give greater flexibility in scheduling. So the only reason the conference matters is if you require a team to play every other team in their conference. The other alternative would just to give more flexibility and say, you know, you have to play 2 teams that are more than 10 miles away from your, or outside of your area, however you define it. But so, you know, there isn't any specific team or teams that we have to play, but just say, look, you have the ability to create the schedule, play the teams that are important to you to play, recognize that there's an interest from the NCGLA in having a little bit of travel and kind of flexibility or ability for some of the more widely distributed teams to get games. And so, you know, try to meet both of those objectives just in a more flexible way than the way it's currently set up.
Okay, well, I would like to wrap this topic up. I think we've got some good feedback, and we've taken notes of everything everyone said. We've got good stuff in the chat box as well. I definitely would just say, like, we have conference rules so that no one gets left out of getting games, and you know that there's got to be some sort of a little bit of structure at least to make sure there's a fair playing field. So that is the ultimate goal.
Erin, I just wanted to reiterate, I mean, that is why there are conferences, because you know, we're in an area that's pretty concentrated, and it's pretty obvious to us who we would play. There's other clubs throughout the NCGLA that are more outliers, and so if they weren't part of a conference, they would be excluded from scheduling. So the purpose is for equitable scheduling. It is, like I said, it isn't quite as obvious in our 680 corridor, but that is why the NCGLA has conferences.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for your feedback on that. Just a last note that we are actively pursuing a new website that would help us enhance scheduling features. Hopefully we will be able to adopt something in the next near future. But we have not shared anything specifically yet. So what we, in the meantime, want to offer is this option that you guys might like. Would you be interested in submitting your games via an NCGLA template, which is an Excel sheet? It would have drop downs already embedded for your ease. And how do you guys feel about this?
I personally don't like that idea, and the main reason is, you know, there is some data validation that happens when you go to enter it directly on the NCGLA site, and then the bigger reason is there is definitely confusion about who should enter the middle game of a 3-team round robin. And I know for us, there were a lot of cases where we were hosting a 3-team round robin. Neither of the 2 visiting teams entered their middle game, and so I ended up having to enter it for them. I actually think that might be a better process anyways, but nonetheless, using the spreadsheet approach, you don't have that kind of real-time visibility into what's been entered and what hasn't. So you can't really confirm that entire day has been entered correctly. All you can do is submit yours and just hope someone else submitted theirs. But the lag in getting that validation of whether everyone submitted the games you thought they were supposed to, I think would be a real challenge.
This would be all of your girls teams, all of your boys teams would be submitted on 2 separate sheets. Brian, to your point, I think I get what you're saying, but we try to provide that education in our schedulers training, what that middle game for round robins means. It's like your home game, but you're not actually the home field. So that is something that happens quite often, but we do try hard to mitigate that problem. But we felt like, as opposed to having to log into the website and log in each game one at a time on the League Athletics site, that this might provide an easier way to submit all of your games. Anybody else have any feedback on this? Are you opposed? Is everyone opposed to this option or idea?
Excuse me, so some clarification. Is this along with or instead of?
Instead of.
Oh.
It might be, I mean, maybe it would be. I can't answer that, to be honest. I don't know if it's an absolute no, but this at least would be an option to just, you would email your Excel spreadsheet directly to Dan once all of your home games were inputted for your girls and your boys, and then he would upload it in one button, and then he would be able to scrub everybody's schedules the same as usual once they're all submitted.
Aaron, do you know what the process would be for verifying the accuracy? So the way it's done now, you know, if Brian enters a game for Pleasanton against Walnut Creek, then Phil can, it's a little checkbox or something. I don't recall exactly what it is, where, you know, Phil can verify, yep, all good, thumbs up on that one, right? And so everyone's on the same page. So with the spreadsheet, I'm just wondering how many, you know, if there would be a verification process, right? So would we know what other teams are submitting and if conflicts exist?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kelly. I think that's still to be determined if this is going to get dumped into like a big read-all spreadsheet that people can go in and check visually before Dan dumps it into the League Athletics. Because what would happen would be that everything would get uploaded, even if it was like 5 games at the same time on the same field with 10 different teams. It would accept all of that, and then we would have to go back in and figure out what's wrong. So it's all good feedback.
Yeah, I think,
and
Aaron, just to dovetail off of this, I think the key is what we're looking at is the process as opposed to the technical solution. So there's a variety of different ways that can be done, whether it be form, online website, online spreadsheet. There are scheduling solutions that are out there, et cetera, et cetera. I think we're more trying to drive down to the process, the facilitation of a tool or a process that can streamline the scheduling process and reduce kind of the overhead of manipulation of data that the NCGLA does, as well as facilitate more timely information throughout the scheduling process to allow our schedulers to be successful. Is that a fair statement, Aaron?
Absolutely. You know, I mean, I know for me as a former scheduler, I think this looks pretty easy, but to Kelly's point, like once it gets uploaded and your schedule will appear, and then I guess game changes would then have to happen if there was a lot of mistakes. So that might blow up in our faces. So,
well, I think that everyone probably works off of a spreadsheet like this already. So I know when I was doing scheduling, I one of the first things is to create exactly what you have up on the screen in front of me. And then I would take, working off of this, I would be then manually entering in. And I agree with the comments that are in the chat that less league athletics is better because it is labor intensive for people. And so you're working off a spreadsheet like this and then having to, it's you know, a lot of extra work to then dump it into league athletics. So I think that this is good. I would just be concerned about, because what happens now is league athletics allows you to see like, hey, that's not what we talked about in December, right? And so then I can go back to a club, and so just that verification is something that we would need to figure out.
Okay. Well, we will take these notes and there will be further discussion, but I saw some really good comments as well in the chat. So we're going to try to move quickly through these slides. So the results from COVID, obviously, we got a lot of feedback over the weeks saying that regions want to stay local, and so that they can meet the public health officials' recommendations. So how many teams make the ideal conference? Should we provide any incentives for playing outlier clubs at their home field? And should the league host neutral sites to facilitate play between outliers or intra-regional?
So Erin, are we assuming that we're going to be in stage 5 by next spring?
We'd like to. I think we want good feedback in this meeting that would be for that ideal situation, but it's definitely fine for you to chime in as far as like how it would affect, like what your opinions are if we're not. If we're in 4, then we're definitely in like just playing your local community, like right down the street teams, and make it as fun and educational for the kids. But you've got, I guess, we won't know. So these questions really do should be more geared towards the phase 5, I guess. I know we talked a little bit earlier about conferences, but just like what Brian said, they were 3 or 4 teams in a conference this season, and it's been pretty standard. Should we have larger conferences and just tweak the rules? Like what ideas do you have for your region to help make your conference play make more sense for you? And then, if you want to travel, should there be any incentives that we can help offer you?
Erin, one thing that I think would make it possible for us to travel a little bit more than we do now is by allowing roster flexibility if you're traveling more than whatever, 40 miles or 30 miles or something. Because, I think Casey mentioned earlier that if it's a trip to Sacramento, getting every kid on the team to be available for that trip can be a challenge. But if you could say, look, you're allowed to bring subs from other teams at the same age group if you're going to travel from Pleasanton all the way to Sacramento, makes it a lot easier for us to, we probably could get 8 kids from each of the 12B teams who were willing to go to Sacramento to play. So that would be a way, we could offer it as, here's an extra opportunity outside of the games your team would normally play. You get to play some teams you don't usually play against.
Okay.
So we could actually field a good sized team, and then they would get the opportunity to play people from outside their area.
Okay, so like lifting the roster rules for travel, if you're traveling outside of your conference or region.
Or,
So
yeah,
that-
and the long distances, right, where it makes it tougher to field a team. Yeah.
Anybody else? I think we got good feedback from the last topic about conferences. So if anybody doesn't have, if we don't have any more comments, I'm going to move on. So currently we don't have home and away rules. We do have them as listed on our best practices. It's always nice to return the favor, even if it's not within the same season. Our recommendations are to do it the same season, but maybe every other season. And also teams in a conference are only required to play each other one time. So any comments about changing that? And also we have no requirements about game amounts for 10U and 8U.
Erin, I know we've heard from some teams that they will only play if they can come to our fields because they have limited field space. So I think any kind of requirement around hosting home games could be difficult for some of the teams that have availability challenges.
Yep, that's a good point.
This is Emily from Berkeley. I would add to that we had a ton of available fields and all away games lined up this past season. I think because we are a smaller club and didn't have things pre-planned and went into that scheduling meeting. We were brand new schedulers, thought it would all happen there. And so I do think, I don't know, all of our parents were pretty upset because all of our games were away. And maybe just because we're so green, we didn't quite know how to get in there. But just from the perspective of a smaller club who was, I don't know, we were kind of blindsided and ended up with all away games.
Yeah, I mean, I think that highlights one thing I observed too about the scheduling process is that the quality of your schedule is heavily dependent on your kind of experience in navigating this super complicated system.
Yeah,
And so
totally.
you don't have someone who has a lot of experience, and you know, for me, it was people like Kelly explaining how it all works. If you're just throwing in there like our scheduler was a couple of years ago, you're likely to end up with a schedule that you are not going to be happy with. And you know, I don't know what the fix is, but I think, you know, Phil mentioned maybe some kind of technology solution, but definitely if there was a way to have a better process that didn't require as much expertise to, you know, to finagle things in your favor, then I think that would be a win for everybody.
Yeah, it definitely feels like there's a big learning curve, and we felt like on the boys, girls, and the boys and girls sides, we were brand new schedulers, and it was just kind of like, oh, but now even thinking about doing it again, I'm still kind of like, I don't know if it would be any better. I think maybe like 8 years down the road, I would finally get it, but I'm jealous of all of your experience.
Also, I want to chime in. This is Marco from Berkeley too. So Emily and I were the new schedulers last year, and we did it, you know, just kind of thrown in trial by fire. But one thing I thought that was interesting, and this is sort of I don't know how to where this falls, and this is sort of just general scheduling. My dog is laying on my cord. Sorry, but. You know, when we got there, we were told there was no scheduling that was to be done ahead of the scheduling day. Well, when I got there and I started talking to people and pitching, hey, can you come to our field on this day or whatever? A lot of them like, oh no, we're paying that day, we're paying that rate. And like, we've been scheduling for 45 seconds. How do you already have 10 games scheduled? So that's one thing I thought that was, you know, if we address or how did that happen, or did we miss something? Was there like a games are already in place, and then we were supposed to, you know, like boilerplate games that were, you know, that happen every recurring games, and then you fill in the rest. I don't know, but I just thought that we went in there with blank pages and immediately started scheduling, and a lot of people already had, like I said, 10, 15 games scheduled, like within, you know, right when I started talking to them as soon as the scheduling started. So I don't know how that, you know, plays into this whole situation, but it just was my experience of that something maybe we need to address. Or
you make a good point, and we do have our schedulers training meeting. We had 3 online meetings this year to make sure we hit everyone, and we posted the slides and the videos. However, you know, we can only post the best practices, but we can't really, it's hard to enforce it when people want to do the scheduling ahead of time, and people are always going to do that no matter what. Even if we ask them not to, because it is an unfair advantage. I would think everyone would agree with that. The other part about the scheduling meeting, in my opinion, is that it's the process from securing fields, knowing the dates that you have your home games. You've got to have those in order and fight for those first, and then go for those away games and round robins. It can be a dogfight, which is it's not pleasant sometimes, and it isn't fair to the new people. That's why we provide the training. This is why we're having this workshop. We want concrete ideas and ways that we can help make it better, that help you. So the online scheduling option, we need ideas for that. I mean, things are coming to my head, but like we want it to come from you guys. So we can definitely take this into a secondary meeting to talk about this more. Please add all of your comments in the chat. And if anybody has anything else to add, go ahead. One more.
I'll just say, I mean, Marco, the issue is that with the number of moving pieces there are, it's absolutely impossible to do the full schedule in that one meeting. And so what I would say is you have to have 3 to 4 weekends scheduled before you get to that meeting, just to have any hope. So that way you can focus on filling in the gaps with the days you have home field availability. You're looking for people to fill specific dates, but to try to cover all age groups, all teams, all dates, home and away in that short meeting, it's not possible. There's no way to do it. So there has to be some pre-planning. Nobody should go in with their full schedule, but definitely you need a few weekends covered. I really like the way the A scheduling works. I actually think that would work well for B, the way you identify home field dates and then people just go in and sign up for games. And it really ensures that everybody gets the home games they want if they have field availability. I think we should take a serious look at doing exactly the A process for the B levels.
Right. I think it was, we were under the impression that all the scheduling is going to happen on that day. So we went in there with blank books. So, but live and learn, right?
Well, we're also such a much smaller club. So, I mean, I don't know how you all do it with multiple teams at every level. Like, because, I mean, we just had our single teams, I don't know, ready to fill in. But if you have multiple teams, there's no way I can imagine you could do it all that day. There's no way.
Emily and Mark.
I'm sorry. Can you explain to me just real quickly? I've seen here it says the A system sounds good. Can you explain to me just real quickly, elevator pitch, how the A is different than the B?
Yeah, so step one of the A, well, it's all online first of all. So step one is you submit dates that you can host a home game. And so there's a list of weekends and every club goes in there and I think they say pick 3 home dates. You only need 3 home fields per weekend based on the number of teams. And so you just go in and you sign up for a date that you can host a home game. And so after that part of the process is done, you have a spreadsheet with every weekend and every team that's hosting games at their home field. And then there's a second process where everybody goes in and you basically sign up to play against those teams. And so you're filling in the 2 guest away spots for those weekends. It'd be a little bit different for B, but basically you first assign where the games are played, and then the second part of the process is you go in and sign up to play in those games. And it ensures that if there's a mix of home and away games, if you have home fields, you put them in and people will come play there. If you don't have fields, then you don't have to, and you can go sign up to play at the clubs that are close enough to you or wherever you're willing to drive.
Yeah, that sounds ideal.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something we can look into trying for the Bs. I mean, there's definitely so many more teams. So maybe the process might have to be tweaked a little bit, because I know once we post that first spreadsheet, people have their finger on their mouse for like 2 days waiting to click that button so they can get that one spot on that one date. So maybe there might be a little bit of tweaking we can do to provide that. I definitely feel like everyone's wanting to have more online scheduling options. So that's good feedback. So for education,
was it a final decision that from the 8:30 call that the B scheduling will be done in January?
No, we want your feedback to what you guys want. So if you are for pushing scheduling back to scheduling to January, let us know and what reasons why. If you feel passionate that you think scheduling should stay in December as it is, let us know that as well and why. There's a lot of clubs that are asking for just in general everything to get pushed back into January because we've got the holidays and all sorts of other things. Kids are still playing other sports. They have trouble recruiting, trouble getting their rosters done, trouble securing coaches, securing fields. So like then you've got your game schedules and a lot of clubs just don't feel like they have everything else all ready to go and they're being asked to schedule their whole season of games before they even maybe have a team yet. So that's why a lot of people in our summer, I mean, not summer, in our COVID one-on-one meetings with clubs, that came up a lot to push back to January.
Thank you, Erin.
You're welcome. Okay. So we want to know what how you feel about our clinic offerings. Should we continue to coordinate the clinics where we tell you where they're going to be and when? Or do you want to request to host clinics and then we'll help you secure them? And this is meaning like the US Lacrosse level 1 and 2 and 3 in-person clinics. We've had low attendance. We want to increase attendance to give you more opportunities for education. But I guess we might be either missing the mark on locations and dates based on need. So we want to know how you guys feel about that. Like you let us know that you want one, need one, and then we'll do it, or we'll just continue to schedule it. And feel free to, read the other questions and answer those as well. We definitely want ideas to help us increase attendance when we offer clinics, and then any other options for different education, first aid, CPR, different coaching clinics that offer different styles of education.
The clinics offered from US Lacrosse have always been very well done. And you probably already know this, but when they're attached to like a preseason play date or something like that, where you already have groups coming together, that seems to work really well because you're already there. So if you keep that format going, I think you would have good attendance. And I would assume, I wasn't able to go this year with a conflict, but I would assume you have decent attendance at those. Is that correct? As opposed to just an isolated clinic?
So this year we didn't offer the play days with clinics before or after. We definitely did that 2 seasons ago, and I know that there was, I don't feel like attendance was as high as we wanted it. I know the one that I attended for the one that was after a play day was in Pleasanton. There was a pretty small group. I think 2 years before that was in a gym, and that had a huge attendance. So my 2 cents with this question is that we try to evaluate each season how many coaches from your clubs still need to take a level 1, or you still are encouraging them to take the in-person level 1 or level 2, or are you guys good? Maybe you only have 1 or 2 new coaches coming in that you want to tell to take those classes because they've been around for a few years now, and once you take one, you're one and done kind of situation.
I would say Pleasanton is sort of in a bit of a wave. We were maybe in a couple of down years where we had a lot of experienced coaches, but we will be coming up to a period where like we had to beg people to coach this year because we just didn't have enough at certain age levels, like 8U. But 10U and 12U was fine. And so I think we'll probably be in a need position again in the next 1 to 2 years for that training as those coaches move up to higher levels.
Okay.
Crossing our fingers they come back.
Yeah. I think I'm sensing that we probably need to do a little bit of an ask earlier, like, do you foresee your clubs needing or wanting USL clinics this coming season so that we can sort of partner up? I know this past season in one region, we hosted clinics and the participation was just so low. I think some got canceled. So yeah, US Lacrosse flies out and they're paid to put on clinics for more than 2 people. So some areas are in more need than others. So would you guys want us to reach out and ask you, do you want one, or just should we automatically have one every season in the East Bay or in the Central West?
I mean, I went the year that it was on the day of the play day, and it was a pretty full gym. And I think that was just, we all sort of committed to that was a lacrosse day, and everyone was in Pleasanton. And so you just went afterwards. But I also think registration and enrollment was just a lot higher that year than it has been. So I can't really predict what it's going to be like next year. I don't know if people are going to be itching to get back out and do things, and they're going to want to get certified and get re-engaged, or if people are going to be really reluctant to engage next year. I don't know.
And kind of building on, actually, Michelle, you said like this commitment to like lacrosse day. I think we feel that with some of our coaches, and if the in-person training and certificate like is in place of spending a whole day doing online trainings, I can see where a lot of our coaches would enjoy that sense of community and getting to meet other people in the league. But if it's kind of an in-person and you also are probably spending a whole nother day or weekend doing all the other online trainings, I don't see a lot of our coaches doing that. So I know like just streamlining all of the certifications and training is just going to be so helpful. I also wanted to, Up to Us Sports' logo was on there, and I wanted to elaborate a little bit about that because we at Oakland Lacrosse Club utilize Up to Us coaches, and that may not be something I'm familiar with, but it's a wonderful organization. They provide essentially AmeriCorps positions just for coaching. And so you have a contract with them. You generally have to have the candidates in mind to apply for this. But once you do, they go through this very easy application process. They become an AmeriCorps member. They get a stipend from Up to Us. They get ongoing training and development. They get a living stipend, and they get an educational stipend. Especially if you have like maybe some high school graduates or and other local college kids, or it's a really great fit for college kids to coach and be a part of this. And they get a lot of amazing training that is, I highly recommend it. All of our staff have been to their training, and it's fantastic. So that's a little plug for Up to Us. But also just if you have questions about it, please reach out to me. Again, Allison from Oakland Lacrosse Club.
Thanks, Allison. Yeah, I mean, we just want you guys to know that we want to provide and facilitate providing education, but we also want to make sure that we're providing it where the need is, and so just bridging that gap. And this is regional, so obviously this is going to have the same problems in a sense that we do for our play days and jamborees, where the location is. It's not always going to be equal. People are going to have to travel. So that's why asking clubs to reach out to us to say, hey, we want a clinic. We want to host a clinic, and putting them in touch with and getting the US lacrosse thing set up. So, and we're also looking to push out some more educational pieces and look to provide something different for those coaches that you have in your organizations that have already done USL 1, 2, and are certified even level 3. So there are more things to do. So that's what we're looking to do.
And just to add on, I'm wondering if like in December when some of the scheduling happens, if you could maybe send out a Google form when we have a better idea of how many coaches we have, and we could let you know experience levels of coaches. So you have the big picture of, okay, we have this many new coaches, so we would definitely want to offer one level 1. And you'd have an idea of where they are too. And then I like the idea, I bet most people on this call have been coaching for a while. There hasn't been a lot of offerings, like you said, like a level 3 and up. And like I've said several times on this call, the trainings from US Lacrosse have been so good, and what they do, and the techniques that they utilize can be immediately applicable with your team. So I know I personally would love to see something, a level 3 and those offered as well in our area if that's feasible. But perhaps getting all the numbers in December about how many coaches we think we're going to have at what levels might help you decide what to offer in our area.
Thank you for that. I know the U.S. lacrosse people will definitely appreciate that too. I think there still needs to be more buy-in, I guess, for some of our more experienced coaches who maybe took the level 1 and level 2 years and years and years ago, that they're totally different and they're amazing. And even someone who's coached for many years can get a lot of tools from it. And to give it a chance, it's only 3 hours, 3 or 4 hours, depending on which course you're taking. So yeah, I think we'll continue to offer them, and maybe some more stuff that's different for people who've already taken those.
Hey, Aaron.
Yeah.
Quick thing on those two. I think it's a timing thing too for us. Is we kind of know ahead of time when the date is, because sometimes when they have these trainings, they're like right when we start practice, and coaches don't want to get away from, they want to, because we only have limited amount of practice. So maybe some before the season starts.
Like in the fall?
Yeah, because they kind of looks like they like end of January, February is kind of when they've had them. And I know a lot of coaches are like, well, I need to practice versus go to this. I think they're great programs. I've been up to level 3 and they're all great. US Lacrosse does a good job. I just think it needs to be a timing thing for that.
That's good.
And then secondly, I like how you guys are doing regional things. I think that's our problem as clubs, is we're all individual clubs, but we're not regional together. And a lot of this a lot of communication and stuff as the presidents, I think we just need to be like all together and do stuff like we're doing now. I think it'll benefit our region basically.
Yeah, I agree. We're looking to have add commissioners or change the commissioner program to be regional commissioners as opposed to age level. So maybe a little kind of age levels too, but definitely getting more regional discussions happening so that we give each region the support that they need, because they're not all the same. They have different challenges, for sure. So this is, we want to make sure you guys are all aware that we have a sample club operations manual. It's on our NCGLA homepage. It's on the upper right-hand corner. There are direct links to a Google Drive folder, which has the club leadership manual. It's a sample club leadership manual. So just to give you guidelines, guidance, especially if you're a new club, or maybe things aren't going well and you want to get some good ideas to help. So we've got the season workflow by month. We've got roles for the boys and girls reps and specific club admin tasks and specific to the president as well. What other topics or activities would your club like to see covered in the sample leadership operations? And what's missing? If you've used it before, like, let us know your experience with it. And we are already looking to add the hold harmless agreement and tax donation letters, as well as a transition checklist for presidents and treasurers to help you, pass the baton.
So I used it. I think I used this calendar. There was one that had like all the tasks. It was great. It helps me build out. I mean, I just copied it and used it for like putting in all the dates. Like, okay, if this is due by December 11th, then I know I need it 5 days before or whatever. So creating some internal dates to put on our calendar. So I thought it was great.
I like that point to add the internal dates. I think that's a good tweak, like just maybe put comments in our sample that, don't forget to give yourself some cushion before the due date to like reach out to the people that you need the information from. A lot of us forget to do that.
Especially if your board is only meeting like once a week and you need some board approval on things, once a month, and you have a date somewhere in between. Hopefully your board's not meeting once a week. Yeah.
Any other feedback or ideas for club leadership support?
Aaron, too, I think like maybe too, like some of us have been around for a while too, just kind of mentoring new presidents or other clubs that have just started to say, hey, this is what we did right, this is what we did wrong, just so they have something to bounce off of and not just like, shoot them through the wind.
I wanted to bring this up. I mentioned it sort of in the last meeting, the Southwest region, is that myself and Chris and Laura, we really put our resources together to make that club president's manual or like club leadership manual. And I got a lot of really great, useful experience from being part of the Warrior Club for many years. And I asked permission to get all the stuff that our club board used, and there was some really great stuff, including that club calendar flow. And so thanks to the Warriors for that. And I think Petaluma Club too had a lot of input. And we thought it was all really great stuff that made our clubs really strong and run well. So we sort of made it that sample. So kudos to those clubs and leaders. We also have a Google Calendar that you subscribe to from that same link on our website. So we want to make sure that was useful to you, helpful. Did you use it? And are there any other events or tasks that you'd like to see put on that? One suggestion that was made in the previous regional meeting was that we make one for coaches and one for club leadership, so that they didn't kind of intertwine, but there's important dates and events and tasks. And if you want to comment on that, but also how can we help your club with expanding the sport in your area? And does your club need support with high school or city planning, the adoption of lacrosse for your high school teams in your region and area?
I don't know, this is Brian from Scorpions. I don't know if this is the right place to add it in, but our 8:30 call, we spent some time on the inclusion part. Like I said, I don't know if this is the right place, but maybe there's a spot in here in that previous slide with the checklist that you are checking in on a club, on us to make sure that we're following through on our communication to our organizations on what our policies are, or we're actually taking steps to at least educate our coaches and our teams.
I think I hear what you're saying, Brian. Obviously we give out guidance and best practices for how you run your program, but you're going to run it how you see fit for your community, and you have all the options that you need and want to run your club how you see fit. But we just want to make sure that you guys know when, obviously the organization, the club leaders vote every year, the operations guide, you agree to follow that with the dates and all of the rules. So that's why this summer workshop is so important. So if you want any changes, additions, scrap this, we hate this, this is when we want to know that. Yeah, I figured that most of the clubs in the Central West region have pretty strong high school programs, but if something comes up where there's a high school that is looking to add the sport, that you let us know, that we can provide help through NorCal chapter, US Lacrosse, and we have a lot of resources. So instead of not saying, I don't know how to do this, ask us, and we have people that do know how to give support to new high school programs or adding lacrosse into a new community. So continuing to grow the game. Like I said, we have the scholarship program and then the U.S. lacrosse programs that Lynn brought up earlier. So we sort of covered this. So we have a draft text going on with the operations guide updates to include coach recruiting rules. So we'd like to know what guidelines would be helpful to your club, and what would a coach or parent need to know about youth recruiting, and if you have any other suggested changes to the operations guide as a whole. Does everyone understand what we're talking about with coach recruiting?
Yes. Is there I'm just curious, and I haven't experienced this. Is there an issue? Is that why this is being created?
Yeah, so some regions have issues with this. Some don't.
But Erin, just to clarify, you're saying coaches recruiting players from other areas, correct?
Yes, and it's also, you know, coaches also coaching outside of, if a coach is a parent and they need to leave a club and go down the street and coach for another club and their kid comes along, you know, it's probably amenable across the board. But, you know, it's more of the non-parent coaches. I think it's more of the issue, like the club coaches, the off-season coaches who, you know, maybe they move from one region to another and then they recruit all of their players to join their club. And so they all vacate from that one club, and then so they want to play all the time, you know, all year long. So it just decimates certain in-season rec or, you know, in-season community-based lacrosse if a coach is taking players. So I'm going to open up this document. So this is what we have right now on the website. Let's see if I can make this bigger. So coaches who have changed clubs may not coach players they have coached on a previous team for a period of 1 year. The penalty for knowingly violating this NCJLA policy will be, and then the bullet points as you see. So the language is looking to change. I think I'd like to just show you what the new language is kind of coming out to. So coaches who recruit players from outside of their club's geographic boundaries and or from another NCJLA club will be barred from coaching within the NCJLA for a period of 1 year. I'll let you guys read that and provide feedback. The bullet points are really great to kind of understand. And this is just a draft.
I mean, it just seems really strict. I mean, I guess I haven't seen this in the East Bay, so it's something that we would handle in a coaching contract, and I'm not sure why it needs to be an NCJLA thing, but it doesn't feel like it is necessary, but maybe I'm missing something here.
Can anybody offer any examples, even if it's just like hypothetical or experience that they've had or have known about that this has happened to them, so it could clear up questions?
So this is Rob at Livermore. We've had players recruited elsewhere because we don't have an A team, and parents think that their players are at an A level, so they request to go to other clubs. We don't even know if they'll make the A team there, and we never even find out. And sometimes there's disagreement as to whether they're real A players, but I'm not sure how this policy would cover that situation. That's a tough one because you want the kids to play at the level, and if we don't have an A team, we don't want to feel like we're holding them back. But would this punish them then for going to a team to play at a higher level?
I hate to generalize, but I think in our East Bay, our region where we are, all of us are, I think we all talk and we're all pretty, aware of what's going on in our areas. And again, we all talk and communicate. So I don't know, I don't think it really pertains to our group specifically, but the league, does have to do something because there are other regions that don't cooperate and don't talk. And so, I think that's why this is coming out.
Yeah, and essentially it would affect anyone in the league, even if it's not right now happening to you and to this region. We want to provide support to the clubs that it is happening to so that we can provide protection.
Aaron, too, I also think it kind of works both ways too. What if, there's a disagreement for whatever reason and that coach wants to leave and coach his son at a different club? Now you're not allowing that.
For parents, it's not really the issue. It's more of the non-parent coaches, I believe, or program owners.
It doesn't state that in that. It just says coaches who recruit players.
An exception may be granted for a parent to coach their child or relative team. So right here.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I didn't see that.
Yeah. So if you read the top paragraph, there are exceptions, obviously, but as our sport grows and continues to change, I think we just want your feedback. So if there's no feedback, that's cool. You can add it if you don't feel comfortable speaking out to this. You can add it to the chat or email us offline separately. So. And I think that's it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Are there any other topics that you feel you need to bring up? You can add them to the chat or I think we are limited on time right now. We have the girls and boys sessions later and some people might need a break.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you, everybody.
You're so welcome.
So next section at 3:30.
Hold on. Let's see.
I think it's 3.
Let's see. Oops, I guess I don't have the calendar. Oops. Oh, I hate that thing.
It's on the top of your slide, Aaron.
Oops.
The next slide.
Right here.
Keep going.
Oh, you're right. 3 o'clock. Okay.
Oh, 3 o'clock.
I've been staring at my computer for too long.
Sounds good. See you there.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Erin.